chat. We've got, there we go. We're having a fireside chat with the topic, what the heck is a vCISO? It's brought to you by Quantum Symphony and Cynomi. So we just want to say thank you for taking your time out of your busy day to join us for the next 30 minutes. So before we get started, if everyone would like to say hello in the chat, we love that. I'd love to put the questions in the chat. Any questions, keep it live. We'll have plenty of time at the end of the 30 minutes to do a Q&A session. If you'd be so kind to put yourselves on mute, that would be wonderful. As you heard before, we are going to be recording this webinar to be sending it out, and we'll be sharing the slides. So some introductions as we go. Our first introduction is JP Hill. He is the CSO of Quantum Symphony. He's also the president of ICC Squared of the Dallas-Fort Worth chapter. We have William Burchett. He is the president of Logos Systems and the vice president of ICC Squared, Dallas-Fort Worth chapter, and the vCISO. And we have a great guest here, Aran Rosenblum. He's the head of partnerships, and he has a really cool company called Cynomi with a really cool tool. So keep your eyes open for that. And then you have me, Jim Ulrich, CRO, Quantum Symphony, and enough of that. Let's keep moving. So a couple of the questions that we have as we begin is what everyone's asking. What does a vCISO do? I know this is a basic question, but that's what we're going to do over the next few minutes. Go through this. We're going to hand it over to have a fireside chat. Be raw. And so I guess I'll turn it over to JP first, Bill, William, and Aran, if you want to jump in.
Absolutely. Guys, let's be bold.
Let's be bold, right? Let's be real here.
Well,
so tell me, what does a vCISO do?
Well, let's frame that first, because
okay.
You have two terms that are really part of the industry now. You have a vCISO, which is a virtual Chief Information Security Officer, and you also have what's known as a fractional CISO. In my opinion, for organizations that are in the mid and small business arenas, they do not have the budget sometimes to have an executive on board. What a vCISO or a fractional CISO does, it gives them the ability to basically crowdsource the experience that they need to have with other companies of the same, I guess, company size. So in the instance of you need someone to be a security executive in your organization, you would obtain a vCISO. So he could come in, do the things that a normal CISO would do in a larger organization and help guide your path in terms of cybersecurity. Will?
Yeah, I would say that's a lot of it. But the other thing is taking cybersecurity and the business strategy and bringing it together. I think one of the big disconnects with cybersecurity and practitioners and analysts is a lot of times what you get is there's a lot of technical, there's technical controls, but there's also, the people, the process, there's the alignment with business, there's the, taking the business strategy and the risk appetite and understanding what the business's growth goals are. And that transcends business size. You can have a one-person $1 million business that wants to get to 5 million, and they'll have the same, strategy and growth that a big business would when you talk about revenue percentages and things like that. So a CISO or virtual CISO, any type of security executive, is going to take that business plan and execute that securely so that the business is protected as they go through these different stages of business. And so that's the policy, that's the legal, that's the, all the compliance. If there's any regulatory things, you go from accepting X number of credit cards to a certain value. Now you've got other reporting requirements. So a CISO or a vCISO will come in and based on that business side, be able to provide that insight so that the business can feel confident in their risk posture for their own growth and protecting their business as they grow. And that's kind of the missing step between just security practitioners and securing data, securing people and infrastructure, but also aligning that with business. So that's one of the main things that a vCISO will do.
And also from the chat, we have somebody said that the vCISO is a trusted advisor, and that's absolutely true. Because as Will stated before about understanding the business, you're guiding the strategy of that organization from not only a business sense, but combining the business with the IT and being able to marry the two so they can not only help the business prosper with their use of information technology, but protect that information technology.
It's absolutely, you're right. It's the glue. We see it as a glue between the people, the processes within the cybersecurity space and the technology, and that glue is crucial for any organization, whether it will be medium size, small size, and even big size enterprises, to make sure that they are simply aligned with their cyber posture. And we will talk today about that and find out exactly what should the vCISO is required to do in terms of putting all those pieces together.
Right, and you're absolutely right, because one of the misnomers that security practitioners often face, we're the people that are going to say no. What we're trying to do now is basically change that idiom over to not the people that say no, but no, but. Yes, you have a good idea, but this is what we need to do to make it protected.
That's
Well, and I would extend that down to a CISO also has to say the no and flip it. So, historically, the security teams have been telling the users and the business, no, you can't do that because of these security implications. But it's also the reverse. You've got the security executive that's going to turn around and say no to the security team. No, you can't have this super expensive tool that you think you need because it doesn't align with the business strategy or the business budget. So that no does work both ways. And that's where the security executive can come in and actually communicate that both ways so that business strategy then comes back to the team.
That's some really great points, and I'm sure there's a bunch more. Let's just move on to the next question. That was great points, and we have plenty of other questions towards the end. But as we move over, one of the questions that we get a lot is, you could probably spend hours on this one, but let's try to keep it if we can. But why are vCISOs needed, and how are the 2022 trends driving growth? And I'll turn it over to the panel and see where we go.
This one I'd like for Aran to take first.
Oh, yeah. This is certainly a big topic. And, there's a couple of trends that we see out there that's transforming the entire market into the understanding that, first, there's not enough cyber professionals out there. And that's a big issue that many organizations, state level organizations, are trying to tackle on the daily basis, right? There's already 2.4 million cybersecurity professional gap worldwide, and nobody see kind of the horizon for that gap to be closed. And that's one trend. The other trend is, of course, cybersecurity attack surfaces are growing rapidly. Organizations are being ransomed on a daily basis. It just picked up. We see growth for 25% year over year on organizations being attacked on a daily basis. Just those two trends are bringing the vCISO into a position where there's a growing need for those professionals by any type of organization. So a vCISO, fractional CISO, as you mentioned, JP, is someone that can actually handle multiple accounts, right? You can manage that on a daily basis with a higher degree of professionalism and provide those organizations with the tools, requirements, and thought leadership around cybersecurity. MSPs, MSSPs, and other service providers are also facing a major challenge on providing those type of services. And a vCISO is somebody that can actually provide them with that level of expertise. That's what we see all across. Doesn't matter which territory, worldwide.
And
Well,
you know, I want to add to that. I mean, the big difference is we're in a booming gig economy. You know, new businesses are spinning up, and you know, there's always that change that, you know, if you're in an organization that is, I would say, a legacy organization, mature, been around for a while, then all the processes, those things, you're moving slow, you have change management, you know, you have all this structure. But when you're in a startup, or you're in a you know, one of these real nimble small businesses, innovation, you're in this think tank, you're trying to get a product to market, you're building minimal viable products on the fly. You know, the problem is you get to a point where security is the afterthought. And so that's where a vCISO can also come in. And, you know, this demand, we can take and help that strategy from the beginning, but not be there fully building and running this program. You know, these are the things you need to think about when you're developing and doing these minimal viable products. And, you know, there's all this great thought leadership, but think of security early on, because then you're not going to be surprised in, you know, a year's time after you've built this awesome product or service or that now all of a sudden you're in a bind because of regulations, you're in a bind because of insecure code, or, you know, a surprise that, you know, your entire stack is written, and now, you know, this log4j that we've are all cursing this last month, you know, that now your entire stack is vulnerable. And you know, so it becomes that balance where even the small business, the nimble business, can bring in a security expert for a small amount of time, you know, as little as, you know, 2 to 3 hours a month, just to help build this strategy and put those nuggets there that get the security going in their business. And then as they mature, you know, I hope every business gets to the point where they need a full-time security staff, full-time CISO, all of that. And then you mentioned the MSPs and MSSPs. You know, that's another thing. There's a lot of people offering vCISO services, but then there's also growing that. And, you know, do you hire, you know, 20, 30 vCISOs to handle your customers, or can one good vCISO come in and do, you know, create this program that then is you know, kind of pushed out, you know? So there's all these different elements to think about on what's driving this demand for the vCISO.
And I'm going to take it a little simple. We have the list above, and I'd like to talk about a couple of those attributes of that list. First of all, cost. If you look across the United States, you can have a CISO in an organization with a starting salary of somewhere around 140 up to 700,000 a year. That's not including the total compensation package, in which case, if you're making 140,000, when you add in healthcare and other benefits, that takes that total compensation package up to maybe around 200,000. And then when you add in bonuses and things of that, you may have a CISO for organization that's getting well over $1 million a year. So we know that most of the small businesses out there, and even the medium-sized businesses, can't afford that type of thing just because of other budget concerns that they have. So where the vCISO can come in, they are giving the organization a strategic roadmap to be able to align the business with the things that they need to do, not only from a compliance side, because let's go ahead and separate the two. Compliance is what you need to have to operate in your industry. So if you use credit cards, you're going to be following PCI, things of that nature. But from a real security standpoint, in which case the protection of that organization is paramount. As Will mentioned before, the Log4j. Well, guess what? Now you have your IT staff trying to answer questions they're really not competent enough to answer. Okay, they can look it up. Of course, we all can look it up. But what you need is an actual strategic plan that is customized to that organization and prepped for them to be able to answer those types of things when they occur.
This is a lot of great information, and we can spend probably a long time on it, but we just have a few more questions to get to. But you know, I agree, strategy, resources, training, cost, flexibility, productivity, and probably a host more. So thank you. I know we're looking at what the trends are driving in 2022, but just moving on, another topic that a lot of people were curious about, moving to the next one here. So a lot of us on this webinar, we have to figure out how can vCISOs grow their business. If we could just pivot to that for a little while, maybe we'll just turn over to Iran, maybe Will, JP, and let's just spend a few minutes, touch points on this. How can vCISOs grow their business?
Well, one of the things came up earlier in the chat window, and somebody said they're a trusted advisor to the organization. One of the things that, in my opinion, and I've experienced, when you go into an organization, you don't know anything about that organization, but as you help them resolve issues in their environment, you become that trusted advisor, and they come to you with more problems because you're a resource to them that helps them fix things that they know are wrong. Will, Ron?
Yeah, no, I agree. And you know, I would also say that there's a difference of, you know, as you're looking at your business as a vCISO, there's you know, someone mentioned some larger firms, you know, there's, you know, all your big audit companies are offering vCISO service, and you know, there's you know, different large IT service providers, global IT service providers that are offering vCISO service. And I think the big thing is there's different levels of vCISO. And so it's understanding what your market, what your expertise is, you know, as a vCISO, even as some are going to be more experienced in finance and the financial sector. Some are going to be more experienced in defense and the defense industry. But, you know, figuring out those size and things, you know, it's going to be a difference of a vCISO that's, you know, invoicing at, you know, $250 an hour versus a vCISO that's on, you know, $600 an hour on a retainer with one of the big 4 audit firms. And it's also looking at, is the vCISO there to advise or to help you grow your business? And so a vCISO can be used both ways. And I think that, you know, growing your business as a vCISO, it's figuring out that niche, figuring out what area do you want to help advise, what, you know, how can you handle more clients? Because, you know, as a CISO, it's easy. You're in one business, you are, you know, in that security team day in, day out. You can do a 5-year roadmap, you can implement, you can train up the team, you can work with compliance, legal, risk in a big company. But when you get into, you know, smaller, more nimble areas, that doesn't jive. Sometimes you get a business that there is no IT team, or you get one that has, you know, maybe 2 people on staff. And then the rest is sales or something else. So the vCISO, when you start looking at some of these other, you know, I think the growth is there because even large industries looking for those vCISOs for staff augmentation for their on-site CISO. business division, vCISOs, all of that, or divisional, there's different ways to call it. But at the end of the day, you've got the CISO, and then you got someone else that he's delegating work to, he or she's delegating work to. For us to build vCISO practices and build that business, we've got to figure out how can we do more for more clients, because you can either price increase, you can either offer extra services, or get new business, right? So you've got to look at, to grow a vCISO practice, I can either go get more clients, raise my prices, or offer extended services. So
There are two
one of
more
those
options,
three-
Will.
What's that?
There are two more options.
Okay, what are those? Go ahead.
Well, one is partnerships. So remember, as a vCISO, you're probably using a lot of different tools and technology to empower your services. And part of that scheme is to partner with the, with the vendors and other, other parties that can contribute to your growing business. That's one thing. The other thing is technology. By using really robust underlying cybersecurity operational platforms that assist you to do more with less, can definitely leverage your expertise as a vCISO, in addition to serve more clients and have the ability to partner with additional partnerships and build an ecosystem around you that can, at the end of the day, either serve you better or bring you more business, or allow you to provide better services to your end customer.
And I agree with all of that. But I think the biggest thing that helps the vCISO in terms of growing their business is having a standardization methodology of how you treat your customers and how you service your customers. If you subscribe to Six Sigma, I subscribe to Six Sigma. I want to be able to wash, rinse, repeat. And that process should be able to go to whatever company I use. No matter what industry they're in, I should be able to do the exact same things to help them. There may be some customization to that, but overall, I should be able to repeat the process.
So these are great points. And I know we're running low on time, and we could talk a long time about business development and how to gain new companies. And maybe that's for another webinar. But here we go. What are new tools in the market to help vCISOs? What do we see? What's a trend? If we could take a couple of minutes on this and then wrap it up for Q&A.
I want to grab that one first.
All right.
We have a vendor right now that is really, really an important part of my tool set. And because the reason why I picked this particular vendor, it gives me that initial risk assessment, and it gives me the tools I need to help write policy, and it gives me what I need in terms of getting that organization on a governance model, which will lead to them being more secure in that environment. Will?
Yeah, and I would agree. And we've got someone who can actually bring more to that discussion on the chat here. But I think that the big thing is making it repeatable, making it automated. If I can automate tasks, as a CISO, one of the biggest things that I had to do was write reports, risk reports, incident reports, budgets, all of those things, project plan, strategic roadmap, all of that comes together, risk rating, risk reporting, remediation, PO plans of action, system security plans, all those things come together. It's a lot of documentation, and that takes a lot of time.
Incident response plans.
Exactly. So,
Many others.
Automating the, a lot of that on the writing and the planning is definitely the best way for a vCISO to be able to handle more clients, have it a repeatable process, predictable, and be able to communicate effectively what those results are, because you get used to seeing the same thing instead of, focusing on one client. Now you can take the exact same model, repeat it over and over. Ron, you want to run with that?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of tools that can assist the vCISO in his daily processes. Automation is crucial, as JP mentioned, and I think there's a great ground for innovation in that space. Since we see that trends, spreading across the industry, it's time for vendors to kind of have their thought process in place and understand that there's plenty of innovation that can brought in. There's many tools out there. This technology, cybersecurity technology stack is huge, and the vCISO is kind of picky, and he probably will choose a handful of technologies under his belt as a toolkit, and how those technologies actually converse with each other, it's crucial for the success of the vCISO.
Correct. And I'm paying attention to the chat while this is going on. So you see me bending down, that's because I'm watching the chat. But one of the other tools I think you should have in your toolbox, if the organization doesn't have it, you're going to need a GRC tool. Okay, because as somebody mentioned before in the chat, when you're looking at an organization, you're not looking at it for just security, you're also looking at it for compliance. And you're going to be the person that has to guide that organization to be able to answer their audits, their assessments from the compliance side, and also prep them for security. You need that GRC tool to, one, be the, I guess, application of record for all of the things that that organization does with compliance, but also that is your application of record for you to help them retain all of the artifacts and things that they would need, not only from the compliance standpoint, also the security standpoint, because what you don't want is having to rely on somebody in the organization for their historical knowledge. All of us can be hit by a bus, car, train, and that information is going down with you.
Well, and I want to add to that. I mean, there's always the discussion of, my business doesn't have regulation, or we just have PCI, but we outsource that to, PayPal, Stripe, or something else. But, I think that's even a place where vCISOs can help, because, when you sign up for Stripe or PayPal, you're agreeing to a certain responsibility for those credit card transactions, and it's a part of the processor agreements and things like that. So, compliance, every business has compliance. All 50 states have laws on the books. Most industries have laws on the books. So there's compliance everywhere, and it's documenting, because you may never have an auditor knock on your door. You may not need a GRC internal for the business, but as a vCISO, one of the tools in your back pocket is a GRC, because you may never get asked during an audit, but you might get that knock on the door. But the other thing is the insurance. That business may be looking for business insurance, and these insurance companies now are coming in and doing cyber risk assessments. They are asking for this evidence. They want program details. And if you're the vCISO and you're handling 10, 50, 100, 200 clients, is how can you effectively answer these questionnaires on insurance with evidence and do it efficiently? And so that's where the GRC will help you keep that evidence, keep it ready, because you may not need it for an audit, but you will need it if there's an incident. If you do need notification or things like that, you are going to get asked. And when you get these business insurance questionnaires, you're going to start getting asked now. And and the regulations are constantly changing. So you may not be regulated today, but you might be tomorrow. And so that's where.
And these are great points. And this is part of the top 2 or 3 challenges that we see a lot of vCISOs are handling. And talking about products and tools, we'll have to go into another discussion. And I know Ron didn't say, but Synomi, I think that's a really great tool.
Well,
I know
I gave him that.
Yeah, I know we're at the top.
We
Of
can always
the
take it
30
offline.
Yeah, I know we're at the top of the 30 minutes that allocated, but we're going to wrap it up for some Q&A questions now. And those who want to drop, feel free to drop or stay on. We'll be on for a while, but we want to be respectful for your time. Everyone's busy. So we're going to be following up with a couple questions that we got in the chat. And the first question that came in and was, will vCISOs recommend products?
I think that depends on the expertise of the actual vCISO that's in that position. As you may well know, in the industry, there are a lot of CISOs who are not as technical as others. So from that standpoint, I believe that there is a fact-finding mission that would have to occur if that person is not of the ilk of being technical.
I would add to that too. I think it depends on the area. So if you're, working with MSPs, MSSPs, there's distributors that they work with, there's tool sets that they have available that maybe that aren't implemented. So, when you start looking at these compliance controls that are going to be needed, depending on, who you're working with as a vCISO, there's going to be certain integration points that you're going to want to have with existing tools. There's going to be certain distributors that you already have relationships with. And so, yes, I do think a vCISO would help advise on tools, but I think a lot of it's going to be, where they're sitting. If I'm advising an MSP, it's going to be what will fit into your stack, your tool set that will fill this gap that you have in your offering to your clients, versus if I'm sitting at a bank that has historic infrastructure, historic security tools, and they want integration. So, yes, I do think there will be an advice there. Even doing vendor bake-offs as a vCISO, bringing in multiple solutions and letting the business and technicians, help make that decision. I think, it really depends on your relationship with that customer and how you advise.
And also, I'd like to add to that one thing that Aran said earlier. A lot of that is going to come along with the expertise that you have in the organization. Where I think a lot of businesses fail, they agree to bring in these products and not realize that they have to have actual analysts to take care of that particular product once it's bought on site.
So let me ask you a question then, because another one came up. And so a good question. How can a vCISO limit tool sprawl?
First of all, I think the biggest way to limit the number of tools that come in an organization, look and see what that organization actually has that they're using. One of the things my CEO despises is shelfware. Organization gets all hot because a vendor comes in and says, hey, this is the best widget that's out there. It's going to make you secure. One single pane of glass and you can see everything that's going on in the environment. So they buy it and then they forget, Jesus Christ, we have no one that can actually run this tool. We have to do a whole bunch of things to get this set up. We don't have the people to be able to run it. The next thing you know, it's slowly going by the wayside because no one wants to use the tool. They don't have the people to be able to use it. And you spend, good money on something that you don't use. So you have to eliminate what you purchase. If there is a comparable product and they have it in-house, see if you can get that working and see if you can get the expertise in to run that product before you go spending money on something that does the exact same thing as something you already have in your inventory.
I would also add to that. I think a lot of it too is going to be the knowledge. A tool was brought in for a reason. Previous CISO, previous expertise brought in a tool. So what drove the need for that tool? And does that need still exist, right? Risks evolve over time. A risk you had 5 years ago may not be relevant today, right? If I throw out there, the Melissa virus, all these, past threats may not exist, right? So a threat you had because you had a basic firewall in the past, now you have a next gen firewall. A lot of these risks are reduced, or, you've implemented a, zero trust network access VPN that's always on. These risks evolve. So then the tools that were put into place are still sitting there. So I think the big thing is evaluating that, as a vCISO. One thing I do is an as-is assessment, right? What am I walking into? What's existing there? Start looking at the overlap, but then talk about that strategic direction on, are these tools going to get you to that strategic direction? But I also think that tool sprawl works internal as a vCISO is, we have all of these things that we could use, and it's, what do we actually need? And do we offset that to IT, security team, security analyst? So, and that goes to how big is your organization supporting you as a vCISO? Are you a one-man shop? Are you a big business that has multiple vCISOs and an advisory service, audit service? And that changes. And so that tool sprawl works internal as well, is figuring out, how am I going to be the most efficient? I'm not going to be the most efficient if I'm logging into 15 tools to do an assessment for a customer, because I can't repeat that 100 times in a month. So I think it works both ways.
I think the rotation between technology tools are growing over the past couple of years, just because of the introductions of new attack surfaces and technology on the cyber front. There's so many vendors out there that trying to push new type of AI/ML based solutions out there, which are creating kind of a disruption in the way companies and vCISO should look at the entire landscape in terms of, which tool is the right one for which organization. And the vCISO, in a sense, has to understand that, it has to be able to embrace new technology quicker, probably quicker than any organization out there, and better understand, the type of solutions, as JP mentioned, which will be extremely fit into the organization kind of DNA and requirement over time. And that's just something that many of the organizations should think about. And of course, the vCISO has to lead them into the understanding that it's so fragmented out there, and they need to take an approach of embracing innovation over time so they can keep themselves protected. That's from my point of view.
Let me dovetail off that. We had another great question that came up, and it says on the topic of how can a vCISO generate budget within an how can they do a proof of value or generate budget with an organization?
Well, and let's take it back to the tool topic.
Yep.
If you've paid for a tool, or you're paying for a tool on a yearly basis, and nobody's using that tool, why are you paying for that tool? That's money that could be diverted elsewhere. Okay, if you have old technology in your organization, old apps in your organization, and nobody's using, that can be eliminated. Okay, it's all about being able to understand what that business does and how to make that business more efficient from an IT side. I don't think that the vCISO's job is to tell the business how to do business, but to help them use technology to further the practices of that business. And
Right.
as a vCISO, it is part of your job to be able to go into that organization, understand how they operate, and protect how they operate.
Well, and I want to add to that. As a CISO, as a true, enterprise CISO, you're going to board meetings, you're creating budget pitches and strategic direction and why the business needs that, and you're aligning it to goals. So, to take that from what a CISO does in the enterprise to a vCISO with multiple companies, that comes to what does that business relationship look like? If you're a vCISO going direct, and then there can be and should be the board level trust, because that's how you build a lasting relationship. The average relationship in the MSP market is 7 years.
Right.
And so if you're going in and offering these vCISO services, you should be that trusted advisor. You should be able to take that strategic roadmap for the business and ask for, here's what it's going to take to secure you through that roadmap that the business is going on. And so, I think there's the immediate win, the immediate cost savings, which is let's eliminate tool sprawl, let's consolidate, let's innovate, use a tool. Maybe it wasn't designed for this, but we're going to add something. And I'll give an example: vulnerability management, right? If you're doing something like Qualys or some of these other vulnerability management tools that have tagging, then you can actually put your criticality tag within the tool. So now you can get a report of what are your most critical assets, which is required on a lot of compliance. So do I really need a full asset management and user to asset documentation that is paper, that takes time, or can I use some of these existing tools in new ways and reduce that that tool sprawl with consolidation? If I have just a tool just to do one particular thing. The other thing is technology suites, right? If you have Microsoft, O365, if you're doing an E3, what is the cost to go to an E5 for the organization? What all do you get with an E5? Does that eliminate hundreds of thousands of dollars that you're spending elsewhere? And I think that's where there's the immediate budget, right? So when we talk budget, it's here's what I can save, and then let's reallocate that money to the strategic plan. But then there's also asking for net new money. And when it's net new money, you do have to go ask for that, but you do have to tie it to business strategy. Just going in and saying, hey, there's this new thing that's going to stop this new attack, it never works. It might work short term, but fear, uncertainty, and doubt are no ways to get budget into a security program.
And let me add to what Will was talking about. Here's the difference between an enterprise CISO and a vCISO. In a lot of organizations, that enterprise CISO's one job is to implement some tool so he can have it on his CV to say, hey, when I was at company X, I implemented, and I'm just going to pick on him because it's easy, I implemented Salesforce, and I was able to get that protected, and now he's moved on. As a vCISO, you're going to be there in front of those people. You're going to be there looking at the board saying, hey, I know I suggested this particular thing, and this is how we were able to save money because we changed the process that now when it was taking you X amount of hours to do something in, and I'm not going to use any more company names, but to do something in particular product A, and now because we're using this new product, we're absolutely more productive in how we are able to spin up reports. Because as the vCISO, you are the one that everyone is looking to provide that guidance from security, and as someone else mentioned earlier, a compliance standpoint. Because you're not looking to run away in that time period that everyone talks about, 16 months. You're going to be the person that they're going to be able to depend on and have a certain life cycle to help that organization prosper.
Yeah, and I, working with MSPs, if the average tenure is 7 years, then the typical enterprise CISO tenure is 18 months. Right. And so the idea that a CISO could be in place for a company as a fractional CISO, as an advisor for 7 years, it's actually a better value proposition for the business than an enterprise CISO. Yes, you don't get 40 hours or more. Any CISO that works 40 hours a week, they're not as effective, but you're getting that relationship. And in the service industry, being a service, we are here to provide that value. and not have an 18-month tenure to go then move on to a bigger company or, different industry or try a different thing. It's more of keeping that relationship going for the long term, and even at that 7-year mark, that most MSPs are in businesses.
So let me just dovetail off that, because there was another great question that came up. A lot of times, people have trouble with communication. Sometimes they don't know how to communicate within organizations physically. So can you provide any tips or techniques that a vCISO could provide on a continuous basis to their employers or employee, on a continuous basis in the security posture? Any tips or techniques?
Yeah, the first thing that anybody that's ever worked with a board knows is there's one question they always ask, and that's, are we secure? The answer is always no.
Always.
Right? Always no. But how can you rate a scale? If I give you a scale from 1 to 10, and if I'm on a scale from 1 to 10 and I'm at a 5, then I have lots of improvement. If I'm at a 9, it's hard to go ask for budget and to talk about improvements if I'm at a 9, because it's like, well, we're at a 9, then to get to 100%, well, you'll never be there. So if 90 is the best you can do ever, then the program's doing what it's doing, and there's hardly any growth. There's just maintenance. So the question comes is, how do you communicate, to the board, this is what our security posture is? Because really that's what they care about, is, are we secure and are we compliant? Because the last thing they want is a data breach and the company smeared all over the news, or regulators coming in, knocking on the door, insurance policies canceled. Those are the risks to the business. So that's all you have to answer. And so, how you build that program and how you do to answer that question, right? It's a very simple, give me a scale of 1 to 10. Are we at a 5? Are we at a 6.5, 7? What's it going to take to get from 5 to 7? And that's a quick thing. And, I'm a big BI fanatic, but the problem with BI is you can put too much data in it. The reason why in the defense industry we use the traffic light protocol is because just with 3 colors we can tell what we can or can't do with that document. And so yeah, so you've got to make it simple, and that's the best way to communicate up is even in the sales. As a CISO, you have to be a salesman. You've got to sell the program, you've got to sell the strategy, and not use the FUD, and but communicate it effectively. There's always the thing, if you want an executive to read an email, put everything you want to say in the first 2 sentences. If you can't do that, the executive's not going to read the whole thing unless you get their interest in the first 2 sentences. So really that's the best way to communicate that.
And I'd like to add to what Will was saying. It goes back to, in my opinion, it goes back to the product set. And the reason why I like Cynomi is because it gives me that baseline of where the organization is when you go into it day one. Because like Will said, they want to know, are we secure? Are we secure? Because they're looking at the red light, the yellow light, and the green light. The way that Cynomi operates, you have a baseline score. So you have a starting point to go in that organization and say, well, we're deficient here, we're deficient here, we're deficient here. And it's like a risk assessment from day one, even though you haven't even gotten to the nooks and crannies of how that organization operates. But it gives you a starting point to be able to say, hey, you guys are not doing this, you're not doing this. I don't have incident response plans. I don't have disaster recovery or business continuity plans. 2 different things, by the way. Where do we go from here? And over the course of time, what you should be seeing when they ask you that question, hey, we're not totally secure, but we're better than we were yesterday. We're better than we were 6 months ago.
Remember, it's a common language that needs to be spoken both on the CX level and the technology level. And I think the tools today can provide you with this kind of a bridging that gap to a common language, which is using a lot of data points to support the recommendation and insights that you eventually present into the board or the CX level, as I mentioned. So this is crucial, the language.
And I think that's one thing that AI has given us is, natural language processing. So looking at taking external scan data, internal scan data, doing it real time, taking policies and getting that text and using that natural language processing to bring that together. There's some new GRCs on the market that aren't spreadsheets but on steroids. There's your tool Cynomi that will take that scan data and give you the project plan, give you the policies, give you that risk score and industry matching comparisons. And I think that's one place that AI, I hear about AI using to stop attacks, but using AI for that natural language processing to bring these things together quickly and efficient is what's going to help that vCISO, in that communication.
And also, I like the fact that we're talking natural language, because one of the things that really disturbs me, and this has to not be a product in the boardroom, it doesn't make sense for you to use technical language and technical jargon when you're talking to these folks, okay? Because they already feel deficient when you're coming in and you're telling them about things in technology. You, as a vCISO, are the interpreter. You're going to take everything that is technical and you're basically going to use a common language, because you're not communicating. If I'm sitting back telling you all of these wonderful terms and you're the only person in the room that understands those terms, you should be able to have enough command of the English language that no matter what that report says, I can translate that report to something that someone finds useful in that room, and make people feel comfortable enough. If they don't understand, ask the question, because you will get a lot of yes, yes, yes. And then after the fact, people will come to you and ask you, well, what did you mean by X, Y, and Z? And if that person had the question, guarantee you there were more that had that same question.
So let me just ask one question, then we can wrap it up. And but there was another one that came up, which I thought was really interesting. So who buys vCISO services? I'll just throw it out there.
Let's go ahead and break that down a little bit.
Break it down. And why?
Well, first of all, right now, I will go back to the FUD. Okay, there's fear, uncertainty, and doubt. When you sit back and the media talks about a breach or something like that, the first thing a business owner should have on his mind, oh my goodness, that could have been me. And if you don't have that, then you don't need to be a business owner, because each and every one of these things are an IP address off of being you that got attacked. Okay, now, and I know this for a fact, Will and I see these breaches every day. So the ones that bubble up to the point where the regular mainstream media likes to talk about it, that means this is really, really a alert to everybody across the board to understand that, yes, this company got attacked. We didn't even get into the topic of privacy. And that is a new concern for the vCISOs out here, because if you pay attention, each and every one of these states is coming up with their own privacy law. And as these organizations come up with privacy laws, if I'm a business owner, I want to know, am I susceptible to any of this happening to me? Because guess what? There are going to be fines
and
that come out because of that.
And I'll add, I mean, the one thing is you asked, who's buying vCISO service? In my opinion, every company should. It should be, even if it's 2 hours during business formation to at least get some policies in place, it should be everybody. Now, I know logically that's not going to happen, but every business, there's an army of MSPs going out and all, in the small business space and offering IT services, equipment refreshes, break fix. There's this, per seat model, per device model. I won't get into any of that, but every business knows I need email to communicate. I need, an ERP in order to handle my finances. or I'm going to outsource that to my CPA or whomever. But essentially, everyone at this point is going to have an email address for their business for communication. And so they're going to have to get that email address from somewhere. They can go out and they can sign up for things themselves. But there comes a point when they get that first fish that they click on it, and now they have a $90,000 ACH. Now they're going to start questioning, how did this happen? How can I prevent it? And they're going to engage with IT professionals, with MSPs, MSSPs. And so every business, in my opinion, needs a vCISO, but they may not know that they need it yet. And so that's where I think the market communication, a lot of regulations require a CISO. If, banks, FIFEC, the OCC, NYDFS, there's a lot that require a CISO, but there's also others that don't require CISO, but they require a governance structure. So it may not be a named person, but it's a governance structure. So, everyone, I think, needs one. Whether they need them 2 hours a month, 3 hours a month, or 40 hours a week is up to the business and that business strategy. But, I do think everyone would need one. And it's up to us as vCISOs, to not go in at, $600 an hour on an advisory call, unless it's warranted for the industry, because we've got to be able to protect the small business, the coffee shop down the street, at the end of the day, supply chain rolls up. So everyone's going to be a supplier to somebody else at some point. And so that supply chain goes up. You see the Target breach, the Home Depot breach, those were contractors, the HVAC contractors, electrical contractors. And so every business should have access to a vCISO.
These are great. Oh, Aaron, go ahead.
No, it's kind of agree more. It's the regulation is trickling down from the enterprise into the small, medium businesses. Talking about cybersecurity insurance policies, right? How many organizations out there have to have cyber insurance? Who's going to do that? Who's going to direct them? Who's going to audit it?
Who's going to advise on what the policy statements are saying? There's a lot of insurance policies out there that won't cover ransomware, won't cover phishing, won't cover these things, because you've got to be able to read that language and understand what that language is saying and translate it into cyberspeak to even pick a good policy. And knowing that a basic breach is probably going to cost you, hundreds of thousands of dollars. So if you don't have, if your business general liability is $1 million, but your cyber liability is 120,000, there on an incident call, when the insurance company brings in their incident response team, you're not gonna be able to hire your own incident response team. The insurance company is going to bring in theirs. That incident response team is going to be, that $120,000 policy. You're going to consume that in 2 phone calls.
Two things.
I just want to,
hold on,
JP, we
real
got
quick,
it 2
Jim.
o'clock.
Yeah, two things. One, we made the assumption that the organization could even get an insurance policy. And two, to what you were saying in terms of the language of that insurance policy, if you notice, a lot of legal organizations or legal practices, they have their own vCISO infrastructure for that exact case. I'm sorry, go ahead, Jim.
No, I just want, we're at the top of the hour. It's 2 o'clock, so we're closing down, but I want to say thank you very much for everyone attending. Emails will be followed up. This whole entire panel, Ron, Will, JP, myself, we're here for questions, answers. Connect with us on LinkedIn. Let's keep this live, and we'll be doing another fireside chat. Look forward to the questions, and anything that you guys or ladies have out there, please let us know, and we'll incorporate it in our next chat. We're looking maybe 4 to 6 weeks to keep this on a continuous basis. We want to thank everybody for their time and appreciate that you've been here. So have a wonderful day.
Thank you
for orchestrating it.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care, guys.
Thank you.
I didn't get my good side in.
I think